Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Our featured subject tonight is Mikhail Igor Peshkowski, aka Mike Nichols, who died recently at the age of 83. He was one of the geniuses of American show businesses in the 20th century. He was a film and theater director, a producer, an actor, and a comedian. He was a nice Jewish boy born in Berlin in the early 1930s. His family came to the United States right before World War II. They lived in Manhattan. He came out to the University of Chicago for college, and that changed his life. We'll talk more about that after we hear about the life and achievements of Mike Nichols from Jake Tapper and CNN.
He was a masterful storyteller, whose most famous final scene, one of the most famous ever, was in only the second film he'd ever directed.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
The Graduate.
I've come to talk with you again.
Kevin Spacey today called Mike Nichols one of the best observers of life. His characters illustrated, acted out our lives, loves, failings, from the dissolution of a marriage and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, to shining a light on our willingness to betray ourselves to please those we love in The Birdcage.
Don't look at me. I'm hideous.
Mike Nichols was born Mikhail Igor Peshkowski in Berlin 83 years ago this month, but he spent the last 60 years conquering American entertainment. There are only 12 people in history to have had the versatility and brilliance to have earned all 4 major entertainment industry awards: an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. And Mike Nichols was one of them. One of his 4 Emmys came for directing HBO's Angels in America. His Grammy came early in his career, when he was an improvisational comedian and actor. He and his partner Elaine May won Best Comedy Album in 1961.
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me.
His prowess for scene setting seduced the Academy 6 years later with The Graduate, a movie still taught at film schools for its bold, innovative techniques. But Nichols' greatest praise came from Broadway, where his work on productions like Spamalot, The Odd Couple, and more recently Death of a Salesman won him multiple Tonys.
Why is it worth telling one story and not another? Well, the easy answer is it's really secretly about all our lives.
Throughout his life, Nichols' serum for success was truth.
Virginia Woolf is the plot like that reminds you of the hardest parts of your own life.
Truth. It was his quest in comedy and drama, but it was the mixture of both he preferred.
Even in something as absurd as Spamalot, I'd hear him going to the car saying, "You've got to be true in this scene. You have to really believe in it, and you have to make us really believe in it."
Believing in him by his side for the last 26 years was another world-class storyteller, Diane Sawyer of ABC News. There as well were beloved friends of the most famous and fiercely loyal kind. Friends such as Philip Seymour Hoffman, whom he directed on stage in Death of a Salesman, and Robin Williams, whom he directed in The Birdcage. After their deaths, Nichols told me, quote, "We are seriously impoverished without both guys." Nichols now joins them, and we are even more impoverished.
Yeah, he had a feel for the culture, he had a feel for comedy, he had a feel for drama. He wasn't always successful, but when he was immensely successful. Here's some critique from the BBC4 Last Word and Matthew Bannister.
Now, Mike Nichols had a hugely successful career as both a film and stage director. Here's a taste of his work.
May I ask you a question? What do you think of me?
What do you mean?
The thing about making a movie that's going well is that you're not sure, but you're not terribly unhappy.
Here we are. You got me into your house. You give me a drink. You put on music. Now you start opening up your personal life to me and tell me your husband won't be home for hours.
So?
But some movies you have a terrible suspicion that this is the end of all of you, and you can't say anything to anybody.
Who's afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Easy to talk about Warner Brothers' new motion picture, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It's hard to tell about.
Melanie Griffin. It seems to me that the victory in Working Girl is the personal equality in the love relationship.
In a new film directed by Mike Nichols.
I'm telling you, she's your man.
Working Girl.
You know, maybe I just don't like you.
Me?
The first thing I thought was that it would be, as it were, a slave ship coming toward Oz, toward the Magic City. I am an immigrant myself, and I liked the idea of the women as imported to do the work. And as you know, it's true. Only the very rich and the very poor can afford to live in Manhattan. Everyone else has to travel to work for a long time.
Eric Idle and I have been friends for about 30 years.
I am Arthur, King of the Britons. You look King Arthur. Oh, be quiet.
And he said to me, you've got to look at Spamalot, you've got to read the script, you've got to come to a reading. I said, I don't want to. And he said, well, do anyway. And then I fell in love with it.
Run away! Run away! Somebody might smell them up! Okay.
The Graduate, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Working Girl and Spamalot, just 4 of the projects directed by Mike Nichols. The critic Matt Woolf is with me in the studio. What was his background? We heard him say there that he was an immigrant. Where did he come from?
Well, he was born in Berlin to a Russian Jewish father, and of course they got out from Germany just before the war, so he grew up in America, and I think saw himself as American. He changed his name, of course. Mike Nichols was not the name he was born with, but like a lot of immigrants to the United States, he always had that slightly acute, very aware outsider's eye that made him part of the society, but a very good gauge of the society.
And he started in a comedy double act, didn't he?
He did. In the early 60s, he and the wonderful Elaine May had an evening with Nichols and May, which was improv-driven, very anarchic, very funny, very droll. And that drollery, you hear it in some of his comments, sort of saw him through his career. He really believed in entertainment first and foremost. And actually, Mike Nichols was 80 when he won his last Tony, which was for directing Philip Seymour Hoffman in Death of a Salesman, so working right up into his 9th decade.
And he worked in both stage and film. Do you think he was equally at home in both media?
I think he saw them as part of a continual spectrum. I mean, it's not an accident that his first movie was an adaptation of a great play, which was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. You would have thought that would be quite daunting, directing Taylor and Burton when you're in your early 30s. He did it with great finesse. He had huge success on television, adapting Angels in America and Wit, and I think he just wanted to go where the talent was.
Was he starstruck? He worked with a lot of big stars, didn't he?
He loved stars. Some people said too much, but to go to a Mike Nichols play or film was to see an A-list cast, hopefully doing A work. And some people he worked with time and again, particularly Meryl Streep, whose career is defined really by Mike Nichols' direction.
But he made stars too, and he made Dustin Hoffman, for example, didn't he?
Well, here was a role in The Graduate written for presumably an athletic, tall, waspy guy, not Dustin Hoffman, Jewish, short, but it was incongruous casting. It worked brilliantly. In the early 80s, he brought a young comedian no one had ever heard of by the name of Whoopi Goldberg to Broadway. The rest is history.
Is it possible to sum up a kind of Mike Nichols style of work? Is there something that defines his work?
Well, he wasn't an auteur. There wasn't a signature visually. I think his style was really in the people he worked with. He liked thinking actors, actors who were smart, who gave him as much as he gave them. And if you saw Chekhov or Wallace Shawn, Neil Simon or Eric Idle, it was brilliantly done with class and style.
And briefly, what was he like on set?
Very funny, very droll. He didn't start for Fools Gladly, but why should he? He wasn't a fool. He was a genius.
Well, as I said, his life changed when he got to the University of Chicago and went to college there after leaving NYU. He ultimately dropped out of school, but he really got into entertainment there. He started the Midnight Special, which is an FM radio program which still runs in Chicago. He helped develop and learn improv comedy. He met his comedy partner Elaine May there, and they did things that hadn't been done before in comedy. They started out at the Compass Theater, the forerunner of Second City. We've talked about it before. He graduated to the Compass Theater before moving back to New York. While they never actually played Second City, it was their success that helped make Second City a success. What going on at the University of Chicago at that time was witty, urbane, it was topical. It was anything but what they'd characterized the Eisenhower years as. It was somewhat a reaction to the Eisenhower years, but in some ways it was a logical consequence of the Eisenhower years. You had other people doing that type of humor back then. You had Shelley Berman, you had Mort Saul. But May and Nichols were unique, and ultimately they took their act to New York, to Broadway. They made a comedy album which won a Grammy, one of the first comedy albums to win a Grammy, along with Bob Newhart. And they performed on Jack Paar. Jack Paar was the early Tonight Show before Johnny Carson, and it was the epitome of urbane, witty humor. The Mike Nichols obits didn't emphasize Nichols and May enough, so I thought I'd play a couple of clips because they were truly groundbreaking, and here's the one on Jack Paar.
I saw Mike and Elaine do a sketch based on their indignation at a particularly outrageous American custom, a custom which Jessica Mitford has since called the high cost of dying. Mike Nichols and Elaine May.
Welcome to Long Dust. Can I help you?
Yes, I read your ad. I'm interested in the $65 funeral.
Was that for yourself?
No.
For another. May I ask, where did you catch that ad?
TV Guide.
Just trying to find out where our trade comes from. I am afraid that I'm going to have to ask you some questions.
Yes, that's all right.
All right. Can you tell me, what was the loved one's name?
Seymour Maslow Freen.
Is that hyphenated?
It was.
And here they did an urbane send-up at the 1959 Emmys. You could never imagine this today.
Now to present the next award from New York, Elaine May, of the comedy team of Mike Nichols and Elaine May.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am very proud to have been chosen by the Academy to present tonight's special award. A man who has been voted the most total mediocrity in the industry,
This is the proudest moment of my life. Getting here was not easy. I'd like to tell you briefly how I did it. Firstly, no matter what suggestions the sponsor makes, I take them. And most important of all, I think, I have tried to offend no one anywhere on earth. In 10 years of producing, we have received not one letter of any kind.
Thought I'd play a little music from his works. He did Heartburn in 1986, got mixed reviews, not a great movie, but some excellent Carly Simon music.
Baby sneezes, mommy pleases, daddy breezes in. I know nothing stays the same, but if you're willing to play the game, it's coming around again.
He directed Spamalot, and the original opening was here in Chicago before it came to Broadway. I just happened to have the seat right behind his at the premiere. And of course, here's the big number from Spamalot. This is Britain's most requested funeral tune.
Always look on the bright side of life. Always look on the right side of life. If life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten. And that's to laugh and smile and dance and sing when you're feeling in the dumps. Don't be silly chumps, just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. Always look on the bright side of life.
And of course, his magnum opus, as they talked about, was the 1967 Graduate. Little dated today, but still a cultural touchstone. His genius was casting Dustin Hoffman as Benjamin. It was supposed to go to Robert Redford. Mike Nichols realized the short Jewish guy would be better for the role. Everybody talks about Dustin Hoffman's casting, but they don't talk enough about Anne Bancroft's casting, which was also genius. He originally wanted to use Doris Day, but she turned him down. Although Anne Bancroft was the femme fatale, she was only a couple of years older than Dustin Hoffman. And that seduction scene is written just like a Nichols-May routine. Oh, and that brilliant ending they alluded to earlier was borrowed from Girl Shy, a 1924 silent by Harold Lloyd. And he used the Simon and Garfunkel music, and of course the big number that came from it was Mrs. Robinson, which in good Paul Simon liberal tradition was originally written as Mrs. Roosevelt, but he changed to Mrs. Robinson for the movie, same syllables. Here's part of the version they used in the movie The Graduate.
And here's to you, Mrs. Robinson, Jesus loves you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Stand up tall, Mrs. Robinson, God in heaven smiles on those who pray.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer, Sid Tepps, and that decision to use Simon and Garfunkel for The Graduate was truly inspired. It was one of those decisions that was not only perfect for the movie, but it gave Simon and Garfunkel worldwide recognition. So to honor Mike Nichols, we're going to close tonight with Scarborough Fair Canticle from the movie. Note that distinctive little guitar pluck right at the end. And this is also in memory of a special person named Sue who loved Simon and Garfunkel.
Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Are Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who is there. She once was a true love of mine.